In April 1943, 4 boys ventured into Hagley Wood in Worcestershire, England. They were trespassing on private land belonging to Lord Cobham, searching for birds' nests amongst the ancient trees. The boys, most consistently identified in accounts as Bob Farmer and Thomas Willits, along with 2 others, knew they shouldn't be there, but the promise of finding eggs was too tempting to resist. When they came upon a particularly large wych elm, Bob Farmer decided to climb it. The tree's hollow trunk seemed like the perfect place for a nest. He pulled himself up, peered down into the darkness of the hollow, and froze. Staring back at him from the shadows was a human skull. At first, Farmer thought it must be an animal, but then he saw the hair, curly and brown, still clinging to the bone. He saw the teeth, unmistakably human. The boys made a pact. They would tell no one. They were trespassing after all, and admitting what they'd found would mean admitting where they'd been. They left the skull where it was and went home, intending to take their secret to the grave. But that night, the youngest boy, Thomas Willits, couldn't sleep. The image of that skull haunted him. He told his parents. The police were called, and what they found inside that wych elm would become one of Britain's most enduring mysteries. Welcome to Vanishing Threads. Today we're exploring the case of Bella in the wych elm, a wartime murder that has never been solved, a victim who has never been identified, and a series of cryptic graffiti messages that have appeared for over 80 years, asking the same haunting question. Who put Bella in the wych elm? When police arrived at Hagley Wood, they discovered far more than just a skull. The skeleton had been compressed inside the hollow trunk of the wych elm. The woman, for the remains were clearly female, had been deliberately concealed there. Alongside the bones were fragments of clothing, a dark blue and mustard-coloured striped cardigan, a mustard-coloured skirt, blue crepe-soled shoes in size 5.5. There was a gold wedding ring, though it was rolled gold, cheap, worth perhaps 2 shillings and 6pence. One detail was particularly disturbing. The woman's hand had been severed from her body and was found some distance from the tree. The body was sent to Professor James Webster, a Home Office pathologist based in Birmingham. Webster's examination revealed crucial details. The woman had been dead for at least 18 months, placing her death in or before October 1941. She was between 25 and 40 years old, most likely 35, and stood approximately 5 feet tall. She had light brown curly hair. The cause of death was suffocation. A piece of taffeta had been stuffed deep into her mouth. But perhaps the most telling detail was this. The body had been placed in the tree whilst still warm. Webster concluded that once rigor mortis had set in, the body would likely not have fit through the narrow opening of the hollow trunk. Whoever killed this woman had acted quickly, placing her body in the tree within hours of her death. The woman's dental work was distinctive. Police circulated details of her dental pattern to dentists across the country, hoping someone would recognize it. They cross-referenced missing persons reports throughout the region. But this was wartime Britain. Thousands of people were displaced, missing, dead. Records were incomplete. Entire families had been wiped out in the Blitz. The woman in the wych elm could have been anyone, from anywhere. Despite extensive investigation, no one came forward to identify her. No dentist recognized her teeth. No missing person report matched her description. She remained nameless, a ghost in the hollow of a tree. Then, in 1944, something strange happened. Graffiti began to appear on walls in the area surrounding Hagley Wood. Messages were found in Old Hill and on Upper Dean Street in Birmingham, with wording reported variously as "Who put Bella down the wych elm?" and "Who put Bella down the wych elm, Hagley Wood?" The writing was reportedly high on the walls, leading some to speculate it was the work of an adult rather than children. The graffiti changed everything. Until that moment, the woman had been an anonymous victim, a Jane Doe. But these messages suggested someone knew who she was. Someone knew her name was Bella, or Lou Bella. Someone knew she had been placed in that tree. The police took the graffiti seriously. The Evening Dispatch speculated that it might be the work of someone coming into the city early in the morning with farm produce, someone who knew the area, who moved through it regularly, who might have knowledge of what had happened in those woods. But the graffiti raised more questions than it answered. If someone knew Bella's identity, why not come forward? Why write cryptic messages on walls instead of going to the police? Was the graffiti writer the killer, taunting investigators? Or was it someone who knew the truth but was too frightened to speak openly? The messages provided no new leads. No one came forward to claim knowledge of Bella or her death. The investigation stalled. The graffiti didn't stop. Since the 1970s, the phrase has appeared sporadically on the Hagley Obelisk, a monument near Wychbury Hill, close to where Bella's body was discovered. The wording has evolved over the years. By 1999, it read, "Who put Bella in the Wych Elm?" The spelling changed, perhaps favouring theories of witchcraft and ritual murder. In 2020, the graffiti was vandalised. Someone painted over the word "who" with hers, changing the message to "hers put Bella in the Wych Elm." Local newspapers speculated this was the work of a Birmingham graffiti artist known as Hers, rather than a genuine clue. But the fact remains, more than 80 years after Bella's death, people are still writing about her on walls. The question endures. Over the decades, numerous theories have emerged about Bella's identity and the circumstances of her death. The first major theory involved espionage. On the night of 31st January 1941, a German spy named Joseph Jacobs parachuted into Huntingdonshire. He broke his ankle on landing and was quickly captured by the Home Guard. Among his possessions was a photograph of a woman. Under interrogation, Jacobs identified her as Clara Bauerle, a German cabaret singer and actress, claiming she was his lover and that she was being trained as a spy. He suggested she might have been sent to England after him. Some theorized that Bauerle had indeed been parachuted into the Midlands, that she had been working undercover, and that she had been discovered and killed. Could Bella be Clara Bauerle? The theory was compelling, but it had problems. Clara Bauerle was reportedly significantly taller than Bella's 5 feet. The physical descriptions didn't match. And in 2016, Clara Bauerle's death registration was located. She had died in Berlin on the 16th of December 1942, over a year after Bella's estimated time of death. The cause was listed as lung infection due to veronal poisoning, veronal being a sleeping aid popular in the early 20th century. Whether her death was accidental overdose, suicide, or murder remains unclear, but one thing was certain: Clara Bauerle was not Bella. Another theory emerged in 1944 when a Birmingham sex worker contacted police. She reported that another sex worker named Lua Bella, who worked on the Hagley Road, had disappeared approximately 3 years earlier. The name matched the graffiti. Could Bella have been a sex worker, lured into Hagley Wood and murdered? The theory was plausible. Sex workers were vulnerable, often went missing without extensive investigation, and might not be reported missing by family who had disowned them. But again, there was no evidence to support the theory. No one came forward with further information about this Lua Bella. The lead went nowhere. The most elaborate theory came in 1953, when journalist Wilfred Byford Jones, writing under the pen name Quester, revisited the unsolved murder in the Express and Star newspaper. He received numerous letters in response, including one from a woman calling herself Anna of Claverley. Her letter was ominous. Finish your articles with the Wych Elm crime by all means. They are interesting to your readers, but you will never solve the mystery. The one person who could give the answer is now beyond the jurisdiction of the earthly courts. Anna hinted that she knew the identity of Bella's killer and that the individual had died insane in 1942. She suggested that Bella was Dutch and illegally in England as of 1941. The police persuaded Anna to meet with them. She was later identified as Una Mossop, and her story was extraordinary. According to Una, her ex-husband Jack Mossop had been part of a pro-German spy ring operating in the West Midlands, siphoning information about munitions and aircraft factories to Germany. Bella, Una claimed, was also a spy operating in the same area. Jack Mossop had been present when Bella's body was placed in the Wych Elm. She mentioned another conspirator, a Dutchman named Van Raalte. Una's story had multiple versions. In one, Bella was murdered because of her extensive knowledge of the spy ring, and her body was hidden to cover the trail. In another version, Jack Mossop and Van Raalte had been drinking in a local pub with Bella when she passed out. They put her unconscious body in their car, drove to Hagley Wood, and placed her in the tree to teach her a lesson. When she woke, she was unable to escape and died. This version conveniently ignored the taffeta found stuffed in Bella's mouth. A third version suggested Van Raalte killed Bella after an altercation in a pub, and Jack Mossop helped hide the body. According to Una, her ex-husband had been haunted by dreams of a skull in a tree. He had suffered a mental breakdown and died in St. George's Hospital in Stafford before Bella's body was even discovered. Una's claims were investigated by both MI5 and the police, but no arrests were made. No evidence was found to support her story. The fact that she waited 12 years after the body's discovery and until after her ex-husband's death to come forward raised serious questions about her credibility. Was she telling the truth, or was she seeking attention, weaving a dramatic tale around a famous unsolved murder? Then there was the witchcraft theory. Professor Margaret Murray, an Egyptologist at University College London whose theories about witch cults were controversial even in her time, proposed that Bella's death was the result of an occult ritual. Murray pointed to the severed hand as evidence. In European folklore, there exists a concept called the Hand of Glory, a hand severed from a hanged criminal during a lunar eclipse, preserved through an elaborate ritual and used in black magic. Murray suggested that Bella had been killed by a coven of witches, her hand removed as part of a ritual. The theory gained traction when another bizarre murder occurred nearby. In 1945, a man named Charles Walton was found in Lower Quinton, killed with a farming implement and with a cross carved into his chest. Murray proposed a link between the two cases, suggesting both were ritual killings. Scotland Yard investigated the Walton murder, though the extent to which they formally pursued the witchcraft angle remains unclear. But ultimately, they concluded that the separation of Bella's hand from her body was likely due to animals scavenging the corpse, not satanic ritual. There was no evidence of a coven operating in Hagley Wood at the time. The witchcraft theory, whilst dramatic, had no factual basis. Other theories were even less substantiated. Some locals claimed that gypsies had been camping in Hagley Wood in 1941 and had murdered Bella. There was no evidence for this whatsoever, and the theory seemed rooted more in prejudice than fact. Another theory suggested Bella was a refugee from the Blitz who had been sheltering in Hagley Wood during air raids and had been killed by persons unknown. Again, no evidence supported this. In 2018, the case received renewed attention when British anthropologist Caroline Wilkinson created a facial reconstruction of Bella based on photographs of her skull. Wilkinson had previously made headlines for her reconstruction of King Richard III, whose remains were uncovered in a Leicester car park in 2012 and identified in 2013. The resulting image of Bella showed a woman with distinctive front teeth, giving a face to the nameless victim for the first time in 75 years. The reconstruction was featured on the television program Nazi Murder Mysteries and generated significant public interest. But despite the publicity, no one came forward to identify her. In 2023, the BBC launched an appeal to museums to track down Bella's remains with the intention of carrying out DNA analysis. The remains had been kept in the Birmingham City Police's Black Museum at their Tally Ho training centre until the late 1960s or early 1970s, but their current location is unknown. If the remains can be located, modern DNA technology might finally provide answers. Genealogical DNA analysis has solved numerous cold cases in recent years, identifying victims and perpetrators decades after the crimes occurred. It's possible that Bella's identity could be discovered through the same methods. But as of 2026, the remains have not been found. So what really happened to Bella? The truth is, we don't know. Every theory has problems. The spy theory relies on speculation and coincidence. The sex worker theory has no supporting evidence. Una Mossop's elaborate tale of espionage and conspiracy is uncorroborated and came far too late to be reliable. The witchcraft theory is based on folklore rather than fact. We're left with a handful of certainties and an ocean of unknowns. We know that a woman, approximately 35 years old, 5 feet tall, with light brown curly hair, was suffocated with a piece of taffeta sometime in or before October 1941. We know her body was placed in a wych elm in Hagley Wood while still warm, suggesting the killer acted quickly and knew the area well. We know she wore cheap clothing and a rolled gold wedding ring, suggesting she was not wealthy. We know her hand was separated from her body, though whether this was deliberate or the result of animal activity remains unclear. We know that in 1944, someone began writing graffiti asking who put Bella in the wych elm, and that graffiti has continued to appear for over 80 years. What we don't know is who she was, why she was killed, or who killed her. We don't know if Bella was even her real name, or if the graffiti writer simply assigned her that name for reasons we'll never understand. We don't know if the graffiti writer was the killer, a witness, someone with guilty knowledge, or simply someone fascinated by the mystery. We don't know if Bella was a spy, a sex worker, a refugee, or an ordinary woman who found herself in the wrong place at the wrong time. The case of Bella in the wych elm has become part of British folklore. The graffiti has ensured that the question endures, appearing generation after generation on walls and monuments around Hagley. The mystery has been featured in books, documentaries, podcasts, and countless articles. It's become a symbol of the unsolved, the unknowable, the questions that haunt us precisely because they have no answers. There's something particularly haunting about Bella's story. She died alone, in pain, suffocated and stuffed into a tree. She was left there for 18 months, hidden in the hollow of a wych elm, slowly decomposing in the darkness. When she was finally discovered, no one knew who she was. No one came forward to claim her. No one mourned her publicly. She was buried in an unmarked grave, a woman without a name, without a history, without anyone to remember her. The only memorial she has is graffiti, anonymous messages on walls, asking a question no one can answer. In some ways, the graffiti has given Bella a kind of immortality. As long as people keep writing those words on walls, as long as people keep asking who put Bella in the wych elm, she won't be forgotten. The mystery has kept her alive in public consciousness far longer than most murder victims are remembered. But it's a strange, unsettling kind of remembrance. A woman defined entirely by her death, by the mystery surrounding it, by the unanswered questions. The case also highlights the limitations of historical investigation. In 1943, forensic science was in its infancy. DNA analysis didn't exist. Missing persons databases were incomplete, especially during wartime. The investigation was thorough by the standards of the time, but it lacked the tools we have today. If Bella's remains can be located, if DNA can be extracted and analyzed, if genealogical databases can be searched, there's a chance, however slim, that she could finally be identified. Her family, if any descendants exist, might finally know what happened to their ancestor. The question that has haunted Hagley for 80 years might finally have an answer. But there's also a possibility that we'll never know. The remains may be lost forever. Even if they're found, the DNA may be too degraded to analyze. Even if it can be analyzed, there may be no matches in genealogical databases. Bella may have had no children, no surviving family, no one to connect her to. She may remain forever nameless, forever unknown, forever a mystery written on walls. The case of Bella in the wych elm reminds us that not all mysteries have solutions. Not all questions have answers. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, despite advances in technology and forensic science, despite decades of investigation and speculation, the truth remains hidden. Sometimes all we're left with is a question, written in graffiti, appearing and reappearing across the years. Who put Bella in the wych elm? Thank you for tuning in, and as always, stay curious, stay safe.